Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Gnostic Studies. Tonight, we're going to do Dream Yoga Discipline. We're going to continue on our previous studies. And then the previous class, we learned about the 4 states of consciousness, and we gave 3 practices. You'd remember the practices were in times of self-remembering, to ask yourself, am I in the astral plane? Am I in the physical plane? And to give yourself a little jump with the intention to float and test your state of consciousness there. Also, we had the mantra, Ram Ram, to help remember your dreams once you awaken the day. And we also talked about shifting our consciousness with the attitude of being grateful, bringing us to the present moment, bringing us into that new. So we're going to continue on with the Dream Yoga discipline and preparing ourselves for bed. Those aspirants who sincerely long for a direct mystical experience must unquestionably begin with the Dream Yoga discipline. The Gnostic must be very demanding with him or herself and learn to create favorable conditions in order to remember and to comprehend all those intimate experiences that always occur during sleep. Before retiring to your bed at the end of your daily routine, it's advisable to pay attention to the state you are in. Devotees whose circumstances make them lead a sedentary life will gain a lot if, before going to bed, they have a short but very lively walk outdoors. A walk will relax the muscles. Let us clarify, however, that we must never abuse physical exercises. We need to live in harmony. And that will help us also conserve energy for our other centers, such as our intellect and emotions. So the first tip is healthy exercise and relaxing the body. So dinner, or the final meal of the day, must be light and free of heavy or stimulating foods. Foods that keep us awake or alter our sleep should be avoided. The second tip, do not eat heavy or difficult to digest foods before bed. The highest form of thinking is not thinking. When the mind is quiet and silent, free of daily routine and mundane anxiety, it is then in a state that is 100% favorable for the Dream Yoga practice. So the third tip, take note of your psychological state before bed and throughout the day. Some people might find it helpful to have a journal and to record their psychological states, and not just that, but also with the intention of remembering our dreams. If we have the intention of writing it down, it might help us be more focused on remembering. When the superior emotional center is actually working, the thinking process stops, at least for a brief moment. The superior emotional center is activated with Dionysian intoxication. Such rapture is possible when listening with infinite devotion to the delightful symphonies of Wagner, Mozart, Chopin, and others. Note that the intoxication is not with substance or alcohol, it is with the superior emotional center. So the fourth tip is to activate the consciousness and the superior emotional center with classical music. Music comes from the higher worlds. Music has the power to awaken the consciousness in the higher worlds. Music is the verb of God. It is better to cultivate the art of music than to waste time among the battling of reason. Music is the word of God. The true music is classical music. Let us always listen to Beethoven, Liszt, Schubert, Haydn, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, Strauss, Handel, etc. with devotion. Beethoven's music is especially extraordinary because it makes the superior emotional center vibrate intensely. And you might think of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, that is so passionate and dynamic. The sincere Gnostic finds it in a vast the sincere Gnostic finds in it a vast field for mystical exploration, since it is not music of a form, but of archetypal, ineffable ideas. Every note has a meaning, every pause is a superior emotion. Beethoven, when feeling the cruel rigors and trials of the spiritual night, instead of failing as many candidates did, he opened his eyes of his intuition to the mysterious supernatural, the spiritual side of nature, to that region where angelic kings of these great universal creations live. Observe the musician-philosopher all along his exemplary existence. On top of his table he always had in plain view his divine mother Kundalini, the ineffable Nate Tonzin of Anahuac, or the supreme Egyptian Isis. It is said that the great master had an inscription at the base of that adorable sculpture, written in his own hand, that mysteriously asserted, "I am she who has been, is, and will be. No mortal has lifted my veil." The revolutionary and inner progress becomes impossible without the immediate aid of our Divine Mother, Tonantzin. So the fifth tip is working with our Divine Mother. Grateful children must love their mothers. Beethoven loved his greatly. Outside the physical body, during the hours of sleep, the soul can talk to her Divine Mother. We must, however, begin with the dream yoga discipline. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments area. The dream yoga discipline and preparing the bedroom. We need to take care of the bedroom where we sleep. It must be pleasantly decorated. The colors best suited for the goal we seek, in spite of what other authors recommend, are the three primary hues: blue, yellow, and red. So the sixth tip is using the three primary colors, blue, yellow, and red, in the bedroom. The three primary colors constantly correspond to the three primary forces of nature, the holy Triya Mansikamna, wholly affirming, wholly denying, and wholly reconciling. And here we have the graphic from the Tree of Life, showing the three primary forces. Dream yoga is an extraordinary, marvelous, and formidable. Nonetheless, it's very demanding. The bedroom has to be perfumed and ventilated, but not pervaded with a cold night temperature. After undergoing detailed and careful preparation for oneself for bed, and for the room where one will sleep, the Gnostic must then take care of their bed. If we observe any compass, we can see that the needle always points to the north. It is impossible to consciously take advantage of the planet's magnetic current, which always flows from south to north. A bed should be placed in such a way that the head is facing north. The seventh tip, pointing our bed to the north or the east. And we've also copied a link to the handouts here in the chat, and that will have all the tips that we will mention here in the class. In this way, we can intelligently use the magnetic current indicated by the needle. The mattress should neither be too hard nor too soft. This means that its texture must in no way affect the psychic process of the sleeping person. Squeaking bed springs or a base that cracks with every small movement of the body can be serious obstacles for these practices, always having those interruptions of the consciousness. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, please share them in the comments area. The dream yoga discipline and its practice, invoking Morpheus. A pad or notebook and a pen or pencil should be placed under the pillow so that they can be easily found, even in the dark. So tip number 8 is use clean pajamas and sheets. Bedclothes must be fresh and clean. The pillowcase must be scented with our favorite perfume. Or we can use any type of essential oil. So the 9th tip is to perfume the bedroom with camphor, copal, benzoin, etc. After having met these requirements, the aesthetic Gnostic will be ready for the second stage of the esoteric discipline. And in regards to astral travel, that will be coming in the upcoming classes. In this class, we are really setting the stage for that to be possible. One gets into the bed after having turned off all the lights and will lay on one's back with the eyes closed and place both hands on the solar plexus. One will be totally quiet for some time, and once one is completely relaxed, physically as well as mentally, one will concentrate on Morpheus, the god of sleep. The 10th tip is to call on Morpheus to teach us about the mysteries of sleep. Unquestionably, each part of our real being has specific tasks. It is precisely Morpheus, not to be confused with Orpheus, who is that part of our being who is in charge of training us in the mysteries of sleep. All the spiritual isolated parts of the being want to achieve absolute perfection in their tasks. Morpheus enjoys this unique opportunity that we give him when we concentrate on him. We must know how to supplicate and have faith. We have to ask Morpheus to teach us and to awaken us in the supra-sensitive worlds. By this time, the Gnostic esotericist feels a very special somnolence, and then he adopts the lion posture. So lying on one's right side with the head pointing north, one moves the legs slowly so that the knees are bent. In this posture, the left leg rests on top of the right one. Then one places the right cheek on the right palm and lets the left arm rest on the left leg. So in regards to disrupting consciousness, as we spoke about earlier, having the bedroom set up with a bed that is, not too disturbing, not too hard, not too soft, not making any kind of squeaky noises. That way we can gently and mindfully pass into that deep meditation to help us maintain that state of consciousness as we transition to the dream state. And coming back to the posture here, the lion's posture, that is the 11th tip. Adopt this specific posture while the physical body falls asleep. This is supposed to help our subtle currents, again, help us get into that conscious state that will help us remain aware upon the transition. If you have any more questions or comments, please, we welcome them in the comments area. The dream yoga discipline and what to do upon waking. This is the retrospective aspect. When one wakes up from normal sleep, as we've mentioned, one should not move because any movement shakes up our values, and then the memory of our astral experiences is lost. So we can almost like lose those impressions when we start moving, when we start activating the waking consciousness. So the 12th tip upon waking, do not move, but retrospect and remember the dream. And remember the other tip about keeping the notebook and the pen, so you can jot any details down as soon as you can remember them. The retrospective exercise is needed in those moments when we want to remember our dreams. The Gnostic has to take very careful note of the details of the dream, or dreams and the notebook or pad which has been placed under the pillow. And the 13th tip, take careful note of the details of the dream. In this way, one will be able to have a detailed record of one's inner progress in dream yoga. Even if there are only vague fragments of the dream or dreams in our memory, these must be thoroughly recorded. When nothing is left in the memory, then the retrospective exercise must be based on the first thought we had at the moment we awakened. That thought obviously relates to the last dream. So the 14th tip, if we cannot remember anything, then consider the first thought we had upon waking. We must point out that the retrospective exercise should start before completely coming back to the vigil state, when we're still drowsy, to try to follow the dream sequence. The practice of that exercise always starts with the last image that we had moments before coming back to the vigil state. It is not possible to go beyond this stage of dream yoga discipline unless we have obtained the perfect memory of our dream experiences. We also get a tip for breakfast in chapter 18 of the Perfect Matrimony from Sommeil en Dehors for developing memory. You need memory to remember your internal experiences. Prepare your breakfast with acid fruits, like citrus fruits, and ground almonds with honey from the bee. In this way, you provide the brain with the necessary atoms for the memory. So the 15th tip is to eat a breakfast with acid fruits, like citrus fruits, ground almonds, and honey for memory. The other method to develop our memory is to work with the pulmonary chakras, which correspond to the vowel A, and with mantras such as Raum, Gaum, Chas, Andra, etc. And the A would be pronounced as an A. Okay, and any questions or comments there, please share them in the comments area. I see here in regards to it being very hard on the mind to not dream. Thank you. Thank you for listening. And yes, we do need that type of awareness of what is coming up in our subconscious mind. And yes, clean sheets, a clean environment with those good smells, whatever particular incense or oil gives you those superior emotions. To have a nice clean environment when we go to sleep helps us have a nice restful sleep. That way we're not preoccupied or disturbed. And clean pajamas or bedclothes as well. So remembering our dreams, we have some additional information. Asking for an occult operation in the superior worlds and working with the beloved maiden of our memories. It is urgent to review our pad or notebook monthly in order to verify for ourselves the gradual progression of our dream memory. Any possibility of forgetting a dream must be eliminated. We cannot continue further with the practices unless we've achieved perfect memory. So the 16th tip for tonight. Periodically review the dream journal to find any reoccurrences. And remember that we'll have a handout with these tips, a link to the handout so you can have that with you. The disciples who cannot remember their astral experiences must submit their ethereal body to a surgical operation, which the Nirmanakayas perform in the first hall of Nirvana, the first subplane of Nirvana referred to in Theosophy. So the 17th tip. If you're not able to remember the dreams, ask for help in doing so through an operation in the superior planes. Pray to that being that you connect to for help. After this operation, the disciple can take into their astral travels the ethers which they need in order to bring back the memories. So the ethereal body is composed of four ethers. We have the chemical ether, the ether of life, the luminous ether, and reflecting ether. The chemical ether is related with all the processes of organic assimilation and nourishment, as well as the foundation for all the biochemical processes. The ether of life serves as an agency for the forces that work with the reproductive process of the races of the people. The luminous ether is related with the processes of sensory and extrasensory perceptions. The reflecting ether is intimately related with the faculties of memory, imagination, willpower, etc. So you have your chemical ether, which is your nourishment, like your food. And then you have your ether of life. This is like your vital energy. The luminous ether is your ability to sense and perception. And the reflecting ether, you can reflect with a memory and imagination and willpower. So the first two, the chemical ether and ether of life, serve as a medium for the manifestation of the forces that work in the biochemical and physiological processes. And all of that is related to the reproduction of the human race. So we need those foundational ethers. Light, heat, color, and sound identify themselves with the second two, the luminous and reflective ethers. The wise soul expresses herself in these two ethers. She is the beloved maiden of our memories. When seen clairvoyantly, this maiden looks like a beautiful lady within the ethereal body. It is necessary for the disciple to learn how to take the beloved maiden of our memories in their astral travels, in order to bring the memory of all that they see and hear within the internal worlds. She serves as a mediator between the senses of the physical brain and the ultra-sensible senses of the astral body. She's like the storage of memory, if storage as a concept really fits. So the 18th tip is to work with the beloved maiden of our memories to help us remember the dreams. Invoke your intimus or inner being while in your bed at the time of sleep like this. Father of mine, thou who art my real being, I beseech thee with all of my heart and with all of my soul to take the beloved maiden of my memories out from my etheric body with a goal of not forgetting anything when returning into my physical body, if it is in accordance with the law and your will, Father. Then pronounce the mantras La, Ra, while becoming sleepy. The letter S must have a high-pitched and sharp sound, similar to that which is produced by air brakes. And if you're not in a situation where you have the freedom to pronounce these mantras out loud, then you can pronounce them internally in the mind with as much force and vigor as you can. When the disciple finds themselves between vigil and dream, then they have to get up from their bed and leave their room and travel towards the Gnostic church. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments area. So asking our Divine Mother, Tonantzin, for help and the Initiator Element. Upon reaching the stage of the Dream Yoga discipline, it is indispensable to approach the Tantric aspect. Ancient wisdom teaches that Tonantzin, the Devi Kundalini, our divine, cosmic, individual mother, each of us has our own, can take any form for she's the origin of all forms. Therefore the Gnostic should meditate upon her before falling asleep. So the 19th tip, praying to Tonantzin for help. The candidate will start their sleeping process by repeating daily with great faith the following prayer. Tonantzin, Teteonyam, O my mother, come to me, come to me. According to Tantric science, if the Gnostic persists with this practice, sooner or later an initiator element will come forth from the changing and formless expressions of their dreams. As long as this initiator element has not been totally identified, it is indispensable to continue recording dreams in the dream journal. So the 20th tip, work and pray in order to discover your initiator element. The study and profound analysis of every recorded dream becomes indispensable in the esoteric discipline of the Tantric dream. The sincere Gnostic who reaches this stage of Tantric discipline is, for this reason, ready for the next step, which is the return practice. If you have any questions or comments, please share them in the comments area. So the return practice. When the beginner has successfully performed all Gnostic exercises related to the Tantric dream, they are ostensibly ready for the return practice. An initiator element comes forth, as if by magic, from within the changeling and formless expressions of dreams. Some people who are highly psychic, refined, or susceptible to impressions have always possessed in themselves the initiator element. These people are characterized by the continuous repetition of the same dream. These psychics periodically relive various scenes or constantly see in their dream experiences a creature or a symbol. Every time the candidate wakes up from an ordinary sleep and remembers the initiator element, be it a symbol, a sound, a color, a person, they keep their eyes closed and go on with the visualization of that familiar image. They will then try to go back to sleep in order to continue the same dream. In other words, the aspirant tries to be conscious of their own dream. That is why they intentionally go along with it, but in full lucidity and self-control. So the 20th tip, the second part, is to imagine or visualize the initiator element and then fall asleep. Hence, one becomes a spectator and an actor of a dream with the advantage of being able to abandon the scene at will in order to move freely in the astral world. Then the aspirant, free of the limitations of the flesh outside the physical body, will have discarded their old familiar environment and will have penetrated into a universe ruled by different laws. The discipline of the dream state of Tantric Buddhists will methodically lead us to the awakening of our consciousness. Gnostics can awaken to the real state of illumination only through the comprehension and elimination of dreams. Sacred scriptures from Hindustan solemnly assert that the whole world is promised dreams. Starting with this Hindu postulate, we can affirm that when Brahma awakens, the dream ends. As long as the aspirant does not achieve the radical dissolution, not only of dreams, but of their psychological generators as well, absolute awakening is impossible. The definite awakening of the consciousness is possible only by means of a radical transformation. Any questions or comments can be left in the comments area. And yes, every night we are actually leaving the body. It's just that we're not remembering. So all these tips and all these basic foundational practices are really helping us so that we can be awakened to what is happening, which is now unconscious. And remember, we do have those tips linked so that you can download them and you might find a particular practice or tip works the best for you. And I would also say to be patient. It's a gradual work, and even becoming conscious in your daily activities is a step towards that awakening. So using the initiator element and the return practice. When the Gnostic has kept a record of their dreams, they unquestionably discover a dream that recurs. This alone justifies writing all dreams in a journal. That dream experience, which is always recurring, is the initiator element that, wisely used, leads us to the awakening of the consciousness. Every time the mystic lies on their bed, goes to sleep, and meditates at will on the initiator element, the result's immediate. So in our 21st tip, the first part, use the return practice with the initiator element to enter the astral world. So usually the anchorite relives such dreams consciously and is able to leave the scene at will in order to travel in the suprasensible world. Any dream can be used for such purposes when we actually know the technique. Whosoever awakens from a dream can continue it intentionally if desired to do so. In this case, they must go back to sleep and relive that dream experience with imagination. We must not imagine that we are imagining. Fundamentally, we should relive the dream in its full and crude reality. So the second part of the 21st tip, using the return practice to enter the astral world. Repeating the dream intentionally is the first step towards the awakening of the consciousness. The voluntary separation from the dream in plain action is the second step. Any more questions or comments? We welcome them in the comments area. Meditation before bed and beseeching our Divine Mother. Some aspirants take the first step, but they lack the strength to take the second one. Such people can and should help themselves by means of the technique of meditation. By making serious decisions, these devotees will practice meditation before going to sleep. That leads us to the 22nd tip. Practice meditation before going to sleep. Internal meditation produces changes in our internal bodies. Through it, the awakening of the consciousness arrives. All human beings live within the suprasensible worlds with the consciousness asleep. Meditation provokes the solemn awakening of the consciousness. This awakening is like lightning in the night. This awakening of the consciousness occurs during the normal sleep of our physical body. We move ourselves in our internal vehicles when this body sleeps. The soul travels throughout the superior worlds when the body sleeps. We stop dreaming when the consciousness awakes. Then we live in the internal worlds in a state of intensified awareness. This is what is called the continuous consciousness. Whosoever has awakened the consciousness lives awake in the superior worlds. The motive of concentration and reflection in the practitioner's inner and deep meditation will be, in this case, their inner situation. In this practice, the mystic in sorrow, feeling sincere emotion, will invoke their Divine Mother, Tonantzin, the Devi Kundalini. Shedding tears of pain, the ascetic Gnostic will lament their state of unconsciousness and implore for help. beseeching the Divine Mother for strength in order to detach themselves at will from any dream. So we have a question here about looking for direct tips to help with getting out of the body. So we have mentioned several, and it will be a work to find which one is going to be the most helpful. What I could definitely recommend is that specific practice of checking in with yourself, asking if you're awake or asleep, and doing the jump up with the intention of floating. Because you're doing that in the waking life, you're creating that habit. That habit over time will carry over into the dream world, and it could be one clue to help you see that you are out of the body. Uh, so, as I mentioned, there are many tips, and you should definitely try and see which tips work with you, like the mantra and asking for help to get out of the body and that meditative state. The more that you can layer those practices, it's going to create more momentum for you to be able to assist you to be aware that you are out of the body. And I would say just keep up with it and actually use as many as you can and just create that habit. When you create that habit, again, that's going to assist in the momentum so that you can be aware when you're out of the body. Again, it's very important for us, even throughout the day, that we may not remember if we're sleeping or if we're awake. So the final dream, death and the superior worlds. The Tantric dream discipline is in fact an esoteric preparation for that final dream that we call death. Having died many times at night, the anchorite Gnostic, who has consciously apprehended the four blessings which present themselves in the dreaming experience, passes to the post-mortem state when they die, with the same ease that they willingly get into the world of dreams. Outside the physical body, the Gnostic can consciously verify by themselves the fate reserved for the souls beyond death. If every night, by means of the Tantric dream discipline, the esotericists can consciously die and penetrate into the world of the dead, then they will also be able to study the ritual of life and death while the officiant arrives. After he visited the infernos, where he saw in horror the fate of the lost souls, Hermes became acquainted with unknown facts. Watch on that side, Osiris tells Hermes. Do you see that hive of souls who try to climb up to the lunar region? Some are rushed down to the ground, just like flocks of birds under the blows of a storm. The other ones, with the strokes of their wings, reach the superior sphere, which pulls them into its rotation. Once they reach there, they recover the sight of the divine things. Any more questions or comments? We welcome them in the comments area. So, to summarize and conclude, the purpose of Dream Yoga is twofold. First, to help us receive information from the superior worlds, and second, to help us awaken our consciousness in order to participate in the superior worlds, so that we can be conscious and we can receive teachings and we can be aware when that superior wisdom is coming to us and remember it into our vigil state. Understanding the four states of consciousness allows us to see that we need to move from the first two states into the third before reaching the fourth. So we need to practice those exercises of self-remembering to remember ourselves. Through the analysis of our dreams, we can discover things about ourselves that are hindering our spiritual progress. By seeing which center our brain our dreams correspond to, and there we're referring to our intellectual center or intellectual brain, our emotional brain, and then our motor instinctive or like our physical body. And we can see where we're most often identified and work on it. There were 22 tips that Samael Ameor gave, which are on the handout. It's important to awaken our consciousness, not only for investigating in the astral, but also so that we can die and we do not continue dreaming. So the next class, we're going to go more into detail about the astral projection itself versus waking up in dreams, initiations in the astral world, protecting ourselves before we go to bed, and other related subjects. So that's all that we had to present tonight. We will be continuing this study at the same time next week. Any more questions or comments you have, please share them in the comments area. And we'll be having a meditation tomorrow night at the same time here. Once again, we thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next class.